Sumit, I didn't get the recordings of session 9 and 10.
Who's that?
Sorry, 10 and 11. Priyanka, 10 and 11. I yesterday got 12.
Okay, I'll take a look at it. All right. So guys, we'll get started with today's session. So in the last session, we talked about message shape, right? Apart from the message shape, we talked about execution ID, right? And also we started using set property shape more extensively, and we started doing the the use cases which involved setting the value of dynamic process property, right? And in the map shape, if we have to retrieve the value of a dynamic process property, how can we do that? In the map shape, if you have to retrieve the value of a dynamic process property, how can you do that? You have to go to functions, right? Under functions, there will be a category called as properties,
Properties.
and that you will have
Then
get dynamic process
get
property. Yes, using that you can get the value of a dynamic process property. So if you just recall in the last session, we had replaced, let me come back to this was the one which we were working on, right? So in the last session, we replaced that map shape and a message shape with a new message shape, which is helping us to create a complete XML document, okay, which will go as an input to the error handling process, right? And if we want to ensure that the data which is generated over here goes to the error handling process, what should be the type of the star shape that should be configured in the error handling process?
data pass through.
Very nice. It has to be data pass through. If you have no data, it will not let the data from the parent process to flow into the sub process, right? If you want the data from the main process to flow into the sub process, you need to make sure that the star shape is of data pass through type, right? Right. And what is the significance of execution ID?
It should be it is unique identifier for each execution of the Boomi process, and it should be captured before try and
After
catch
the start
because
shape.
it modifies the execution ID. So immediately after start shape and before try.
Very nice. Very nice. I think you covered it. Someone who was speaking in between was also right. So we need to capture right after the star shape or anywhere before the first try catch. So good practices, just capture it right after the star shape. So now what we'll do is, I told you that the execution ID gets modified right after the try catch. But how do we prove that? Yeah, how do we prove that is a question mark. Not only for that, right? So right now you can see the value of the documents, right? How do we see the value of the documents? We can go to the shape level logs, we can go to the shape source data, and we can see the values of the document, isn't it? So let me just run it quickly. Uh, okay, when you run it, if you want to see what came as an input to the data process shape, how can you see that? You click on the shape, you go to the shape level logs. These logs which you see at the bottom are called as shape level logs. In the shape level logs, you go to the shape source data, and here you can see the document which comes as an input to that respective shape, which is fine, right? But then there might be scenarios wherein I would want to see what data resides in a specific property. So for example, there is a set property shape. In the set property shape, I'm setting the process name, I'm setting the execution ID. Now let's say I want to see what is the value of the execution ID which has been set over here. Okay, so in other tools or programming languages, you must have heard of concept of logger, isn't it? Have you heard of the concept of logger? Yeah, we have different logging levels. And these will basically help in debugging the issue, or getting the more information about the process. Yes or no? Now, how does that work in Boomi, right? So in Boomi, there is a shape called as a notify shape. Okay. In Boomi, there is a shape called as notify shape. So notify shape performs multiple purposes. Okay. But notify shape can be used as logger in Boomi. This is one of the many things notify shape can do. Okay. Notify shape is not only used for logging, it is used for generating alerts also, which I'll talk in coming sessions, but it can also work as a logger. Now, what I'm trying to say is right after this, I want to see the value which has been set in the execution ID related dynamic process property, which is this one. I take this property name. Is this property case sensitive?
Yes.
Yes, this is completely case sensitive. I'll just make a note of it. I'll hit OK. I'll hit OK. And after this, right after this, I'll add a notify shape. Yeah, we add a notify shape. Now, a lot of people get confused between notify shape and a message shape because the symbol or the graphical representation is quite similar, except the fact that you see this exclamation mark right in the notify shape. So even when I started my journey with Boomi, I used to always get confused between these two shapes. So please do not get confused. So sometimes interviewer might ask you a difference also between notify and message. So these are two different shapes completely used for two different purposes. Message shape can produce some static or dynamic documents. It can also be used to transform the data format or the format of the data from one format to another. Whereas notify shape does not change your document. This is an important note. Notify shape does not alter your document. What does it do? It just logs the information. It does not alter your document. So what I'm saying is if let's say something goes and passes by this notify shape, the output of this notify shape will be the same as the input of the notify shape. It does not alter your document. Okay, but that will not be true for the message shape. So let me do one thing. Let me remove the notify shape from here. Let me first put it right after this. Okay, so that you understand what I'm speaking. This is very, very important to understand. And whatever I'm telling, whenever I emphasize, you believe me that those all questions will be either there in the interviews or in the certification. So please pay attention. So now here is your notify shape. Gives you the option to build custom execution logs, right? And it is also telling you can send the customized notification messages. So first we'll talk about the logs. So there are three type of message level: information, info, warning, and error. So I'll say here, let us some message. This is a logger, simple message. I'll hit OK. I'll hit save. I'll run the test. All right. So now when I run the test, I come to the notify shape and I click on shape source data. What should be the input to the notify shape?
XML document.
XML document, right? Which was read from the file. Now I go to the set property shape and I would want to see the document which goes as an input to the set property shape. Is it the same XML document? Isn't it? Is it the same XML document? Answer is yes. That means notify shape is not altering your document. If you go to the process level logs, which you can see from here, right? And if you go to the next, can you see under notify a message? This is a logger. All other messages which you see are implicitly generated by Boomi, but this message, this is a logger. Can you see this message is equivalent to what we have given in notify, right? So is it working like a logger or not? Yes. Now what I'll do is I'll remove this notify shape from here. And instead of this, I'll add a message shape. Okay, the reason why I'm doing so is because I want you to be very clear on the differences between notify and message shape. Ideally, there should not be any confusion. The only reason of having confusion is their symbol. Okay, so I'll run the test. Okay, so it is failing over here, but that is fine. Now, what do you think should have gone as an input to this set property shape?
What is there in the message shape, it could have gone.
So I didn't add anything in the message shape.
Yes, so it will be 0, like empty file.
Yeah, so I didn't add anything. So what will happen is when we see the input to the message shape, it was the same employee's data, okay, which is being read from the file system. But after that, we added a message shape, right? And message shape has a tendency to produce a document, right? So right now we didn't add anything in the message shape, so it will produce an empty document. So if I go to the set property shape, can you see an empty document being passed? Size is 0 bytes. And because of which your flow is breaking up because your data process shape might be expecting some data, which is fine. But I hope this helps you to understand the difference between a message shape and a notify shape, right? So I don't want notify shape over here. I just added so that you understand the difference. Any questions, guys, from anyone? All right. If there is no question, let's move ahead. So now what we'll do is we go to the set property shape, and right after the set property shape, we'll add a notify shape. A notify shape can produce dynamic logs as well as static logs. Okay. So just now, whatever we did was a static log, right? But we can have some dynamic logs also. So we go to this one, and let's say I want to say execution ID is equal to what? Some dynamic value. So how do I get a dynamic value? I will write a placeholder for this. And for this placeholder, we will define the value over here. So now you guys tell me if I have to get the value of this execution ID dynamically, right? Then what should I do over here?
Plus symbol in
Plus
variable.
in the variable. Yeah.
Go to the variables. Then under type, you have multiple options.
DPP.
We have to go for DPP. Very nice.
Execution. Okay.
DPP
Property name
for execution ID.
So I will write the same property which I used to set the value, right?
Yes.
Or else I could use this execution property also.
And go to
and
execution.
execution ID.
Even both ways we can do, but then we already stored a value in the DPP. So I want to use, because I want to see the value in the DPP right now. Okay. I will save. I'll run the test. All right. So when we run the test, I'll straight away jump onto the notify shape. So here at the bottom, we have a shape level logs. Can you see some shape level logs where the value gets logged?
Yes.
So this is your unique ID, which is called as execution ID. So I'll make a note of it, right? Now what I want to do is I want to capture this. I want to capture it after try catch also. Yeah, because I told it gets modified after try catch. Yes. So I'll add one more notify. And in this one, I'll write a message execution ID after try catch is can I get directly from the execution property now? Because if I'll get the DPP, it will be same, right? Because DPP does not change. But if I get directly from this execution property, that's a, or else you first you can store in another DPP and then you can log that DPP. But just to make my life a little simpler or easier, what I'm doing is I'm just trying to log the value of this execution ID using this execution property. Anyone who is not following this and was there in the last session? Okay. So what we'll do is we'll save all the stuff. We'll run the test. Now you tell me whatever execution ID we got last time, right? Will we get the same execution ID in the first notify shape?
It will change.
No,
It has to change, right? Because it is same for execution. I mean, it has to, it will change whenever we have a different execution. So now I go here. I'll just make a note of it. So this is my execution ID. So I'll just paste it right after this. Do you see there is some difference? 59C3. So there is a difference, right? So that means execution ID changes per execution, but then that is not what we are trying to prove, right? We are trying to see if it really gets modified after try catch. So how can we see that, guys? We'll go to the second notify shape and we'll get this one. Yes. Come back. Do you see there is a difference?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So the one which will help you is the first one, okay, not the second one. So those are like sub execution IDs, but you need the parent execution ID to basically trace your complete flow. Okay, so you should take care of this point, but I hope you understand how can you log the data. Any questions around this? Is anyone who is not following this? All right. So now, so far, we have done a few things. We read the data, we read the employees data, then we did some data process shape where we had split the documents. Then we had some branch. What is the purpose of branch?
to get the copy of the document.
Very
Same
nice.
copy of the document to all the branches.
Right. So whenever we want to create multiple copies of the same document to perform different operations, then we can make use of branch shape, and it is always sequential, right? All right. So now we go to this transformation. And here what was happening is we had employee information. Within employee, we had employee ID, we had name, and we had location, right? And in the location right now, we were sending the country, right? Isn't it? We were sending the country over here. Now, there are many things which can happen. What we will do is, okay, just give me a minute. All right, let's move on. So what I'm saying is, whenever you hire any employee, right? Uh, Whenever you hire any employee, you will assign some grade, right? Different companies have different grading systems, right? Like software engineer, senior software engineer, or those are like designations, but then you will have some grades, A1, A2, B1, B2, something like that, or A, B, C, D, or something of that sort, right? So now let's say we have a company wherein as per the grade, salary is decided, right? So if the grade is, let's say, A1, salary is, let's say, 25,000. If it is A2, then let's say the salary is 50,000. And likewise, we can have many grades. Okay. But we will decide the salary as per the grade only. Okay. So I'm writing per month. Okay. You can multiply by 12 to get the salary for an year. So right now I'm just writing per month. So let's say it is 1 lakh. Okay. Likewise, we can have multiple grades. Okay. We can have hundreds of grades also. Okay. Generally, we'll not have hundreds of grades. We may have 15, 20 grades in a company. And what I'm trying to say is these grades are mapped to some specific salaries. Yes. And this is per month salary. So now what I want to tell you is it might happen that today for A1, we are paying 25,000. Tomorrow, my business is not doing well. I want to pay 20,000. Yes. Or else my business is doing fantastic. I want to make it 30,000, right? I want to change the values pertaining to a specific grade, right? So now one thing is that the source application will send you these grades A1, A2, A3, right? They will not send you these salaries. Now these salaries have to be mapped by you, right? For A1 this much, for A2 the 50,000, and so on and on. Another thing is business is saying I want a flexibility such that if at all I want to modify the values of this salaries for a specific grade, I should not need a code change, right? Because every time I do these kind of changes, it's a code change, right? Or maybe let's say I think of a new grade, right? Maybe I want to add a new grade. So that is kind of cumbersome process every time you go and change your processes, right? So how do we take care of this, right? So one thing is, if I want to take care of it in Boomi, in map shape, I would do like this. If grade equal to let's say A1, right? Then sal is equal to, sal means a variable which holds a salary, let's say 30,000. Then otherwise we'll write else if grade equal to A2, then sal is equal to how much? 50,000. And likewise you will keep on adding if else if conditions, right? But if you're 20 grades, you have to add 20 if else conditions. And the worst part is, whenever any salary changes pertaining to a grade, you have to always come and modify your code, isn't it? Anyone who is not following things so far, anyone who is not understanding what is the requirement I'm saying? So what I'm saying is, we had some employees file which was over here. This is the file we have been talking about. Now I want to add another field in this file, and that field is, let's say, EMP sal. It is EMP sal, and let's say it is 10,000. We come over here. For now, I will just add, oh, okay, not employee sal. I'm so sorry. What should we add? Should we add sal or what?
Great.
Great. Very nice. Okay. We should add grade, right? Salary will be determined by Boomi based on the grade. So I'm saying A1. And here, let's say for this employee also A1. This employee, let's say A2. And this employee, let's say A3. Okay, like that. Likewise, we can have multiple, right? Let's assume we have A1, A2, A3. Anything which doesn't look good in this file, it looks fine, right? So we added a new element grade in my employee.xml. Now to accommodate this, right? Now to accommodate this, what is that something I need to do? Or what are the changes I need to do in my process?
Change the profile.
Okay, we have to go here and we have to change the profile, right? Isn't it? So if you go back to the file, where did you add that? Right after location? Yes or no? So we'll come back here, and here I'll say add child, but it is not child, right? So I'll add as a child of employee. And what is the name? Grade. Yes. So now the grade is there one way. And here also, do we need something to accommodate this? Yes or no?
Yes, salary.
Yes. Something is required, and that is salary. Very nice. So I'll go here. I'll get into my DB. What was the name of the table? So I think the name of the table was
APR employee.
very nice. Okay. This is the name of the table. Now I need to alter my table, right? Isn't it? Yes. Do I need to alter my table? I'll say alter table name. What is the table name? APR employees add column. I don't know the exact syntax. Let me try. Okay, I think this is not required. Okay, table got altered. So I go here. So now do we have a new column coming up? EMP sal. Yes. So now this kind of things can happen in your real-time scenarios also, where you started with 4 fields. Now business realize there is one more field to be added, right? And right now we have just 4 fields, right? Things look simpler. Just think of a scenario where you have hundreds of fields and you have already done mapping, and you are really scared that if I modify my profile, my mappings should not go away, right? So your mappings won't go away unless you mess up something. So for example, I go to my operation. So some people, what they will do is they will start generating a new profile. So please do not generate a new profile. Go and add it. Go to the statement, right? So this is your statement. This is, so select statement, right? And click on import. You have to use the connection. So where is the connection residing? Under the connections folder. Okay. What is the schema name? It's system. Okay. It is telling username password is wrong. You remember we modified the username and the password just to simulate an error scenario. Oh my goodness. Actually, it sometimes does not get saved properly. Okay, so which one? This is the table, right? I hit next. Okay, so I'll select all the fields. Next, finish. I'll just save and close, save and close. We'll come back to your transformation. Your transformation remains intact, right? Yes, your mappings haven't gone away. Now, can I map directly grade to employee cell?
No.
No,
Scripting.
it shows error grade. Grade is in
Grade is a string,
string.
right?
And
And
this is
employee cell is a number, right? So it will definitely throw an error, which is right. So one way of addressing it is I will go and I'll use a scripting. Yes. But do you think scripting will is the right method? Because business is already telling you that I can modify these things on the fly, and I do not want code change for all these changes which can happen in future.
cross reference table also.
Yeah. So scripting is not the right option, but let's say we have to use scripting. How will we do it? We'll go to the custom scripting. You can use either Groovy script or JavaScript. I'm more comfortable with JavaScript. Okay, if you're comfortable with Groovy script, you can go ahead and use that. Okay, then you can give a variable name. It can be any variable. It is not necessary the name of the variable has to be grade. It can be any variable. And in the output, I'm just giving sal. And here I will write my script. If grade equal to what? A1. Then sal is equal to, let's say, 25,000. Then what do we write? Else if. So if you're not sure about the syntax, you can go to the documentation and can check the syntax of all these things, right? So there is no harm in going back to the, the w3schools.com or some other site and checking the syntax of this. So right now I'm writing 50,000 for this. And for any other grade, I'm saying the salary is, let's say, 75,000. Yeah, it's 25,000, 50,000, 75,000, A1, A2, blah, blah, blah. I'll hit OK. And now I will just map the grade and cell. Yes, done. All right. So we'll save and close, save, and we'll run the test. So when you start working in real time, you will be adding similar kind of conditions only. So you would see that only one document probably qualified for true branch because I think only one had location as US. So this is the one which is going to the true branch, the one which has the database connector. So this is the original document. But in this one, we don't see the grade. We don't see the grade coming in, isn't it? Do we see grade? No, right?
No, Sumit.
But the grade should have been there. So maybe I'm not sure if we didn't add it or where is the issue. Let me quickly check it. So we added a grade here, right? This seems
When you are getting the profile from this,
okay. Okay, anyhow, we'll take a look at it. That's fine. If we don't have a grade coming in, okay, what should be the value of sal that should go? So if you see here, the document which is going to the database connector,
74.
do we have anything going? I don't think we have anything going. Okay, because it might have been coming as null because that element is required. Again, this is a very common problem which we have seen when we work in real time also, that your JavaScript does not get kicked off unless you pass some value to it. So grade was empty. So when the grade was empty, that nothing got passed to, I think, that JavaScript, and nothing got populated. So some value has to go into the grade, because if you see, there is, I think, this one, and here we have something empty. Okay, so that is probably your location. Let me look at it. Where is the issue? Give me a moment. Okay, so one thing is actually the grade value is not going. So if nothing goes as an input, right, then there are issues. So sometimes what we do is just to kick that off, right, we set some default values. This is how you can set some default values. Let's say I set B1. I'm just giving an example, right? So many a times you will see in the scriptings, some default values are set because if, and even for this, if nothing comes in, this does not get kicked off, right? Maybe you saw just now that ideally we were expecting, if let's say the grade is anything apart from A1 and A2, 75,000 should come. But since there was no value of the grade, so nothing got passed over here, right? So it does not go even to else, right? I have seen this kind of issue a lot of times in real time also. So we have multiple ways to fix it. Let's see if it works with the default value. Straight away, I'll jump onto the database connector, shape source data. Okay, still that is not coming up, I think. Yeah, we don't have that default value helping us out. No worries, we'll take a look at it. First, let's see what is going wrong. Why do we not get the grade? It's GRADE. Okay, so do you realize where is the issue? The profile which we created has grade outside employee. Yep. Do you see here? Where is employee lying? I mean, where is grade lying? Outside employee, right? So there is an issue with the profile. I don't know how this became an issue.
It should be child of employee, I think.
Yes, it should be. Actually, I think I made it child of employee, but not sure if I saved it or maybe I did wrong. But now is it child of employee?
Didn't save it.
Yes. So I'll just save and close. Okay. Save. Let me run it again. Let me run again, and now I'll straight away jump over here. I think we should have the data getting populated now. Do you see the data getting populated now? Yes. We have employee salary getting populated 25,000, which is absolutely correct, because if you see the data which comes as an input to this first branch, let's see what is the data that is there for the employee. It is grade A1, right? Earlier, the grade was not getting populated because your profile was not aligned with the data. But now, since you align that, you have the A1, and that A1 goes in, your script gets kicked off, and it works absolutely fine, right? Now, what about the case? Let's say this. Let's say we have something like this. Do you know how do we write the empty elements? You must have seen something of this sort, right? Empty elements. Yeah, let's say for this, maybe one thing is ideally for every employee, grade will be mandatory thing. Okay. It is not, or maybe we can set some default grades also, but let's assume that we have some scenario wherein grade looks like this. Okay. I have already saved the file, and let me run and see the behavior again. Okay. I'll jump here. Do you see now the control is going to the else? Yes, because you have the grade element, but it is an empty element. So the control is going and kicking off the else part. Else was 75,000, which is fine. But what if we don't have this grade at all? What if we don't have the grade at all?
No value will get inserted.
Now let's observe the view. These are small, observations, but I have seen these all things impacting, your interfaces in real time, your integration solutions in real time. Okay, let's jump on over here. You see the file. Do you see the data now? So the else part is not getting kicked off if we do not have that element. So it means for us that element is mandatory for this condition to get kicked off. Isn't it? Is that right?
Yes.
What I'll do is I'll go to my profile and I'll say grade is a min occurs is 1. If min occurs is not 1, then there is a problem for me. Yes, I'll say min occurs has to be 1. I'll save and close, and I'll run the test. So one thing is we repair the data, or else we can keep some kind of check that the min occurs has to be 1, because it's still actually this is still going through. Uh, with min occurs is equal to 1 also, it is not stopping. All right, no worries. So what can we do here now? We don't get anything here, okay, because of which this else part is not getting kicked off. So anything else you can think of, guys? One thing is I can set some default value, right, in the employee sal. But anything else you can think of, so that even if that grade element is not getting populated, still this should work. Okay, one thing is we can set some default value to the salary, so that a default value must go to the salary part. There are some other ways also, which we'll discuss. Okay, so maybe what you might have to do is you have to create a mapping where your source is also this, target is also this, and in that you might need to make sure that the grade element gets created even if it is an empty element. So what I'm saying is maybe Right after this, I'll add a map shape. Anyone who is not understanding what is the problem statement? The problem statement is if the salary element or the grade element is not there, your JavaScript does not get triggered and you do not get any value of the employee salary. So one way is you just default some value for the employee salary, right? Because your JavaScript is not getting kicked off. Because for that to happen, at least that element should go, right? If that element does not go, that JavaScript does not get triggered. So what I'm trying to do is I'm creating a new map. Okay, maybe some kind of a dummy map I'm creating. And in this, what I'll do is I'll choose an XML profile. So this is my employees data, again XML, XML. Okay. So now whenever you want to do mapping, right, one way is you do one by one, which we have been doing so far. Otherwise, there is a feature called as Boomi Suggest. Okay, here on the top, can you see Boomi Suggest? This is one of the crowdsourcing feature. So Boomi has some crowdsourcing features. I think it has 3, and one of them is Boomi Suggests. So whatever mappings different people are doing, right? Like us, there are many developers who are doing some mappings in Boomi Atomsphere platform day in and out. So they create a database of those. They run some artificial intelligence on that, and they give you suggestions that what should be the mappings. So for example, this is source and this is target. I will just go to Boomi Suggest. I will ask Boomi to suggest me what should be the mappings. So Boomi is giving me some suggestions. So Boomi is saying for employees, you have to map this. So I'm not happy with this suggestion. Let's say I'm not happy with this suggestion. Rest all suggestion looks good to me. Okay. So these are high confidence matches where Boomi is confident these are the right mappings. I'll say next and I'll say finish. So if you see here, the mappings are automatically done for you. You don't need to map these complex elements. The mappings are automatically done for you, right? So you might ask me why you are doing this kind of mapping where your source and target are same, right? I'll explain you. So whenever you want an element to be there, right, in the target. So first of all, whenever you want any element to be there, you have to set min occurs as 1. Min occurs means it should have at least one minimum occurrence, right? So you have to make sure that you add minimum occurrence as 1. Now let's say I do that. Let's see whether it helps or not. So this min occurs and max occurs can completely change the behavior of your integration. So please make sure you set these values properly as per your business requirement. So now what I am trying to do is we got some document. Before that, I added a dummy map and I will see the output of the dummy map, whether I get that grade element automatically created. Okay. So if you see the first employee, does it have a grade element right now? No, right? It does not have, but I definitely need the grade element. So what should I do about it? You go here in this grade. If you definitely need this, right? Set some default value, set some space, save and close. Now you go to as an output of this dummy map, shape source data. Can you see this empty element getting created? And now, so that empty element can be represented like this also. And if you go here now to the database connector, your else part would get kicked off. What I'm trying to say is, I'll repeat that had you had an employee for which the grade was not there. So one thing is you can ask source application to keep a check that the grade has to be there. or else you can keep a decision shape, and if you see the grade is not there, you can discard that. But if those are not the cases, you want to consider that employee and you want else part to get executed, it might not get executed for the XML until it sees an empty element. So if you have to yourself generate an empty element, this is how you do it, right? You go here, you did one mapping which is like one to one as is, but only for grade you added a space which produces an empty element, and that helps you to achieve your use case. Okay, I mean, there are multiple ways. As I told you, you could set the default value also at the target itself. But again, this is an important scenario which you might come across in real time. Right now, we are working on one project where we had similar issues. So we also fix in the same way. So you can do this. But now, any questions so far?
Sumit, can you show me once how to add empty space in that destination file?
Yeah, sure. So we go here. We go to the set default value. And if you see the default value, there is a space. Can you see? Just
Yes.
just you have to hit that space bar. That's all. Okay, and this brackets does not indicate, like even when I started my Boomi journey, I thought this bracket indicates that I added the bracket. I did not add the bracket. It has a tendency to show the default values in the bracket. What do I mean by that is, let's say I set a default value as here as US. So it will put that US into the bracket. Okay, so don't assume that someone has kept bracket and then space. That bracket implicitly comes in whenever we set some default value. Okay, these are like common mistakes which we do when we get started. So I hope we are good with this. Any questions, guys, from anyone? Okay, then let's move on. Then the next thing is, now we realize that this can be one of the solutions, but then this is not scalable, right? This is not scalable, not good to maintain. So what I can do is I can detach these mappings. So sometimes if we feel this is not of use, but maybe it might be helpful later on, you can leave that mapping over here, or you can delete it. It's up to you. Now, to take care of this kind of requirement, which we talked about, right, where in some value from the source needs to be transformed into the other format, and that source and the target combination can scale up, right? So how it can scale up, as I told you, right? Now I'm a small company. I have 3 grades, right? I grow in numbers. Maybe I have to, start with more grades, or maybe I have to change the salaries of these employees itself, or these grades itself, right? So for all such requirements, we recommend using something called as cross reference table. And this cross reference table concept is not a new concept. Anyone who has worked on any integration platform, this concept is there in more or less all the integration offerings, but the names might be different. Some has some, like in Oracle, so we call it as what we domain value map. Okay, domain value map or cross reference table. So what does it mean? It is the process of transforming the values from a notation, from one notation to another. And this is typically used when we want the values to be changed on the fly. Okay, so when you want the values to be changed on the fly, that is where you use it, right? You could achieve this requirement with that if else also, but only downside of that if else is you cannot change the values on the fly. You can, when I say change the values, it does not mean only modifying the values. When I say change, it means create, update, delete. Yeah. So now we'll take care of this requirement with this cross reference table. Okay, so the cross reference table in Boomi is a component. Cross reference table in Boomi is a component. Okay, so where can we create our components?
Component Explorer.
We can create in the Component Explorer. Okay, so now I'll just go back to our folder, right? If you see there is a cross reference table which is reusable across, right? Then you can create it at some common location. If you see there is a cross-reference table, which is, let's say, specific to employee integration, right? So I'll go here and I'll say new component. So when I go to that path, let's say I realize that I have to create a cross-reference table, which will be only use, which will be only of use under this employee integration. So I will click on this arrow mark. I will say new component, and cross-reference table is also called a CRT. I will say employee grade sal. Okay, something like this. I'll say create. I'm so sorry, I did some mistake. What
You
was that?
created a process. You didn't change the.
Very nice. So I changed the type. I had to change the type, right? Which I did not do. So here, if you see, can you see cross-reference table is one of the types? CRT. Okay, employee grade sal. All right. I'll hit create. I'll hit save first of all. So how can I prove that it is a component? First thing is, when I went to create, I
Have
could see under
revision
components, and it has a revision history also, right? All right. It has a unique component ID also, right? So now this by default had 6 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can modify. You can go here and write update table definition. So you can see how many columns you can have. So sometimes people will ask you all the stupid questions in the interview, that how many columns can you have at most. So nobody needs to remember all these things, but just for your knowledge, you can have how many columns? 20 columns. How many do we need right now?
3.
We need only 2. One is grade and another is salary. That's all. Okay. Now it might happen. So somebody might ask you, why for same requirement can it ever happen that we need 3? Answer is yes, it can happen. Let's say you have office in India as well as you have office in US, right? And you have the same grades, but can we have the same salaries for those grades in 2 different countries?
No.
No, right? So in that case, you might need another column. And what would be that column?
Country.
Which one is that?
Country.
We would need country, right? Because country will help us to, country plus grade will help us to go to the right salary, isn't it, in that case? Are you following me?
Yes, Sumit.
All right. So what right now we have 2 columns. So what we'll do is, now it's the time to add some rows over here. So I say A1, 25,000. This is a very cool feature of Boomi. So if you see here, you have different data match, exact match, matches regular expressions, wildcards. So exact match means when you want the grade to be exactly A1 or A2, right? Sometimes we have business requirements where even if it is not exact match, then we would want to consider that. So we can do this. So likewise, we can add as many rows we want. We can even import from the CSV also. If we have the same data in the CSV file, we can import it from there, right? And even you can download this one. So let's say I want to export this whole data from CSV. I can do that. I'll say edit with Notepad++. Do you see the data? Yes. Now you can just modify the data over here and you can import it also if you want, right? How can you import it? I already told you that you go import from CSV and you choose the file. So you have to try all these options, right? Everything cannot be covered in the training. So you have to try all these options so that you're more confident. Okay. So I'll just save and close. This was by mistake created. So I'll just close it for now.
Sumit, 1 minute. If we want to add default value, like in else condition, we have some default value. So how can we add in cross-reference table?
In the cross-reference table.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the cross-reference table, okay, let me go back to the cross-reference table. I'll go to the welcome screen and I'll go to the components. Okay, this is map, CRT. Okay, so now you're saying if I want to default. So let's say if you want to write for empty, maybe you can write something like this. Okay, you leave empty and you write some value. Let's say 1 lakh. Okay. All right. So we'll come back to this. Now we just created the cross-reference table. The question is, how do we use it? So whenever you have a cross-reference table, right, you have to do a lookup. So you'll go to the functions, and under the functions, you will go to which category?
Lookup.
Lookup category. And under the lookup, do you find cross-reference lookup? Yes. So now it is asking for the cross-reference table. So I have a lot of cross-reference table. We will go for the one which we created just now. That is under employee integration. Yes. So now it is asking on which particular column you want to do a lookup. You guys have to tell me on which column do I need to do a lookup.
Grade.
Grade, right? Because from the source we are getting grade. So I'll select grade over here. And what would be my output?
Salary.
Very nice, salary. I'll hit OK. So this cross-reference table is ready. Yes. Yes or no? So I'll just map it like this. I'll save all the stuff. So we created a cross-reference table. We performed a lookup operation. And now we are trying to use this in our map shape and see if we can map the salaries based on the grade of the employee using cross-reference table. And for that cross-reference table, what we are using a function, right? So you can see the map level logs over here also, if you want, right? So you have location, you have salary value is coming as null. I think there is some issue. No worries, we'll fix it. So we'll see here right now the salary value is coming as null, I believe. Let me check. Okay, grade is empty. Okay, so we have 101 Sumit Agarwal, US, blah blah blah. But then in this case, when we go to this cross-reference table, I think when we go to this cross-reference
It
table,
should be 1 lakh here.
ideally should be 1 lakh, right? But that's not happening. So let's say I write something like, for example, I'll write other. Okay. So these all things you will have to, take care programmatically. So right now I would write other, and I'll make sure that one way is in this one. If this is my approach, instead of adding an empty space now, maybe I will add a default value other. This probably can be one way. So what I'm doing is whatever data I'm getting right, and I'm making sure if there is no grade, I set a grade explicitly. I'm explicitly setting a grade for the cases where I was not getting the grade from the input. And then I perform a lookup and I'll go to the database connector and I would see this 1 lakh is getting populated now, right? This can be one way. There can be numerous ways. I mean, if you explore, if you think about it, there can be more ways which we can come up. Other thing is maybe I don't want to use this other, right? I want to go with the first approach only, right? The first approach was there was a space, which is fine. And here in that case, maybe you go here in this cross-reference table, I'm setting some default value for grade. Let's say other. Yeah. Let's try to run it. I'll show you again. Okay, if I'm moving fast, don't worry. Let me see if it is working. And If yes, we'll just review it one more time. All right, so we'll straight away jump over here. We'll go to the shape source data. And if you see here, it's still working, right? So what I've done is this time, if you see the input, which is coming, right, is like this. There is an empty grade, right? But while I was calling that cross-reference table, right, I was performing a lookup operation. I had set the default value, right? But if you observe this behavior of the JavaScript, right, you behave so so here we had set other, because whenever this grade is coming as an empty, this part will kick off, right? But it did not find any value, okay, for cross-reference table. So it was considering that is kind of as a null, and then we had added other. So it took that value and it performed a lookup on that value, right? So when it does not get any value, then only the default value will come into the picture, right? So when that grade came in, it considered it as like a null, that there is no value, and that's why this default value came into the picture. And using that default value, we did a lookup, right? So there can be numerous ways. You just have to make sure you are meeting the business requirement, right? So here, this is how we did a cross-reference table lookup. Any questions?
Yes. So can you please explain again how that grade other came in cross-reference lookup? Where did you add it? I'm not getting it.
Here,
Okay.
this is a default section. For
Yes.
every function, there will be a default section. Here you can set the location. Here, this is the default section, right? So there is a pencil button using which you can edit. This is a second section using which you can set the default values. Third section using which you can copy, and the fourth using which you can delete.
Yeah, and in table for other you added 1,9,000, and here
Yes.
you
Yes.
and still we need that dummy map like source and targets.
Yes. So let's good question. Let's try to do it without that. Okay. So we can get rid of it like this. Save and run it. So we'll come over here directly to this one, and you would see there's no data populating, right? Because your cross-reference table itself is not getting kicked off unless an value or empty element is passed to that, right? If it does not have that element, it just does not ignore that mapping completely. It needs to have that element. So answer is that dummy mapping is still required.
And it is dummy map we just created to
Empty element.
create that value. Yeah, empty element.
Yes. So that's all for today, guys. I will continue tomorrow. Okay, just practice all this stuff and we'll continue tomorrow from here.